No, everyone. They're just filming a new Marvel show here, and you're already starting to disperse. What, y'all don't want to be a part of Secret Invasion 2? We opened this week with Sora trying to get out of a sudden rain shower and finding a rather clean-looking modern house. Yeah, not exactly something that gives off any dilapidated haunted house feels, aside from this little hellspawn.
Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
And I will give the episode this, while Sora is definitely no Manatsu, who was appropriately the cameo cure this week, calling back to her own little misadventure with a quote-unquote haunted doll, her reactions here do make sense for the most part. She went into an empty house, assuming someone was there after hearing a voice, and then she realized it was coming from this seemingly inanimate doll that frankly would creep me out even before it talks. Also, you try and tell me you wouldn't crap your pants if this happened to you.
My name is Taki Tina, and I'm beginning to hate you.
By the way, if this cat, who will later learn is named Maron, sounds familiar, the VA is Kurumi Mamiya, who's best known for playing Ami Hinamori, and freaking Hamtaro. She also played a certain little girl in Oron High. And Mr. Loaf of Bread. Again, the voice of Hamtaro. How's your childhood holding up? Anyway, while the rest of the Cures initially didn't believe Sora's story, which is kind of ridiculous, especially coming from the shape-shifting chicken here, they thankfully quickly start to believe her, especially after the feline started to go full poltergeist on them. But yeah, when Maron started to feel like everyone was rejecting it, it tried to hide away. And the thing that ended up bringing it out was, thankfully, Elle's only major contribution to this episode. Yeah, after last week's disaster of an episode where she and Agha shared the spotlight, I'm glad they kept her involvement here to a minimum. Moreover, it was a good contribution to the plot, as her childlike innocence forced Sora to shack up and realize that she's not being very heroic when she's not helping someone in need, even if it did have creepy space bunny eyes. And conveniently, for the sake of this episode's conflict, Yo-Yo wasn't around to help them figure out what to do with Kate Sith at home. Well, y'all can always ask Komachi for help. I'm sure she knows a few things about creepy dolls. FYI, if you want my quick thoughts about the Otona designs, they're fine. I mean, I still can't really pass any judgment until we actually see them animated. Anyway, they did make the right call and figured that they should try to contact the doll's owners by looking up the previous residents of the abandoned house. From there, we then got something that has been kind of lacking in recent episodes, actual new introspection to our characters, specifically the original duo, who are the only ones that really matter at this point. Sora revealed that due to her hero training, she didn't have time to partake in more quote-unquote girly things, like playing with dolls, and thus couldn't really relate with someone who lost theirs. Masho, in turn, compared having one to being like a first friend, which in Sora's case was likely the girl she was sitting right next to, and then some. But yeah, this surprisingly nice shot in a Mitsuru Aoyama episode was interrupted when Maro thought it saw its owner, Mei from Totoro?
It's that her. Oh well, may as well get some lunch while I'm here.
Later, the evil cat doll revealed that it was actually a demonic dream eater. Now, of course, Martin was showing Sora a very Lotso-esque past it had with its owner before she forgot it when they were moving out. And again, while I'll never be a fan of Aoyama's animation, the direction here was really gripping and did make me feel kind of bad for Maron. This episode's director and storyboarder was Ayaka Noro, who's still a relative noob in the industry, with her previous work again being that one Tropical Rouge episode. Still, she has clear talent, and I do like the visual storytelling here of Sora trying to reach out to Maron, but being blocked off by a projection of the abandoned house's window, symbolizing a wall around the doll's heart. And even if that doesn't work out, I do know this teddy bear who can hook me up with some supervillain steroids. As a result, when Sora woke up the next morning, the cat was already gone. They quickly figured out that Maron had returned to its old abode, but before the Cures could enter, Binotone was in a fighting mood, and impressively turned the whole house into a monster. A house that's a monster. A monster house, you could say. Nope, doesn't remind me of anything mentally scarring in the least. But yeah, most of the fight took place in the house that was a monster, with all the furnishing becoming evil versions of the servants from Beauty and the Beast. And yet, I'd still say the live-action versions of those characters look way scarier than these things. Anyway, again, Aoyama episode, so can't really expect any great fight choreography. I mean, sure, there were some solid sequences, like this nice tracking shot, but I'd more attribute that to the fact that they were working on simplistic backgrounds because they were fighting in the house's pocket dimension. Fortunately, more solid, non-action direction saved this one, with Maro coming in and literally shining a light to sanctity for Sora. Nice stuff. And with that, they all managed to escape the haunted mansion, and yeah, okay, I do kind of wish this could have ended with a tractor and dynamite rather than the fat chocobo again. With the day one, the next thing to do was to find Maro's owner, which would be tricky considering that they had left no forwarding address, so it would take them a little while to...
Well, that was another easy adventure for Spider-Man!
With that, the episode ended with a decent Toy Story 3-esque ending, with Sora playing the role of Andy. Well, I guess it has been a hot minute since the last time we used this clip.
Hey, you two should kiss!
But yeah, very thankfully, this was a much more solid episode than previous weeks. It was just a rather touching, haunted doll story that also acted as a decent character piece for the show's main lead. Really, this kind of surpassed my expectations when I learned that it was going to be animated by Mitsuru Aoyama, as even that wasn't too bad, at least when he has good direction behind him. While the director of Tropical Rouge 19 returned for this one, the writer wasn't back, as that was Hiroyuki Yoshino, who I doubt they'll be able to call in for a while. No, instead, this was written, surprisingly enough, by Konomi Shugo. Yeah, the writer whose output for this season has been overall pretty mediocre actually turned in easily her best episode so far. I mean, sure, writing-wise, this wasn't anything spectacular, and does kind of remind me a little too much of the final Toy Story movie that was ever made, and you can't convince me otherwise. And yet, I still really enjoyed this one, for the most part, for Maron's anti-Lotso tale, and some decent exchanges between Sora and Mashiro. While brief, it was nice to see our leads compare and contrast their childhoods, with one choosing a more Spartan upbringing, but realizing that she might have missed out on a few things, which Mashiro helped to fill in the blanks for her. And while it's a little unusual to have Sora be afraid of something, the reasoning for her being spooked made sense, and it did act as a decent conflict for her to overcome. It's good introspection for our main lead, which we might even get more of next week with Isamu Murayama coming in to write. It's just a simple, yet effective tale, made even better with some impressive direction. I'm not sure whether or not it was just a coincidence that Ayaka Noro and Mitsuru Aoyama would end up working on yet another Haunted Doll episode, much less one that actually plays it straight rather than being kind of a parody of overly tragic doll stories, and yet here we are, and credit where it's due, they seem to make for a decent combination. The dream sequence in particular was well done in getting across Maron's backstory in a short amount of time, helped by having the doll be voiced by a big veteran VA in the industry. Now, of course, it did come at the cost of having a pretty disjointed fight this week, but there was a little less focus on it in the plot, so it didn't detract too much. And overall, for yet another filler episode, this was easily several steps up from last week, with some decent horror comedy and some pretty touching moments. Maron may have even creepier eyes than Hamtaro, but at least they're not splitting any heads open. Work on the last part of the Fudai review is just about done, so it should be on like maybe the next 2 weeks. I don't want to make any promises I can't keep. Still, it was fun to look back at this OG series, especially while watching the current series, to have something to compare and contrast with, for better and for worse. Still, do look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and can I help you?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Well, sure, just as soon as you give me my refund for that awful reboot.